Hello. So, I watched Kelly-Ann's video. It's her newest one about her depth year for 2023. I think it's been out for a couple days, but I finally got around to watching it today. And it got me to thinking, I think I might have entered into a depth year without realizing it, and this is about the halfway point of it. So I thought, why not do a check-in for my didn't know I was on a depth year, but listening to her video, I have 100% been on a depth year. So I made a much more rambly video talking about kind of the how I realized that thing for Patreon, and so it's very rambly. It's just kind of a cluttered thought process, but I'll probably post it the same day that I post this, just so you can kind of have the two different perspectives of it, where I'm a little bit more organized and just talking about it as my unofficial depth year check-in versus the kind of journey of getting there. So for my patrons, keep an eye out for that. It'll be coming sometime right around this video. I realized briefly that when I moved to being full-time creative and writing and everything, doing this whole thing full-time at June, I unofficially entered into a depth year. And it was a thing that I didn't realize until I was listening to her explain the rules of stuff, and I was like, well, I'm doing that. Is that what a depth year is? Because, oh. And so, having thought about it, I was like, yeah, it has been a depth year. So this is my check-in without realizing that I was doing a depth year, but I totally have been since June. So my unofficial rules had been that I was only allowing myself to buy any book that was part of what I was already planning, which was the Sabbath Essentials series that I did last year. That was the only purchases for books I was allowing myself to do. And I pretty much kept with it. I didn't really have any other like frivolous like purchases of books. And then I also, along those lines, decided that I cannot go out and buy a bunch of Halloween decor simply because it's pretty. And instead, around that time, I did a lot more shadow work and of acknowledging like, why do I have such a need for stuff? And also starting to acknowledge like the cluttered chaos that is where I live, because I tend to have doom boxes. So these are boxes that are just miscellaneous crap that I don't know what to do with. It doesn't have a home, but I don't want to get rid of it. And so it just lives in a box that I don't touch for years. And then I open it, I'm like, oh, I love this thing. I don't know, and then like it goes right back in the box. And so over the past few months now, I guess like what, 6-ish months, I've been analyzing that and starting to sort through things and being like, okay, but why am I holding on to this? I don't need to, and doing the shadow work alongside of it. And like, I've donated carfuls of stuff now, and I'm still working through so many piles of things and like wanting to downsize. And a lot of what goes into a depth year is like this weird acknowledgement of like our relationship with stuff, and like having the stuff in your home have a purpose. And like a lot of that comes down to like really analyzing like, you can keep stuff because you like it, that's fine, but if you're keeping it for whatever reason, like I've started to look at my bookcases and realize like, why am I holding on to books that I'm never ever going to touch again, and they weren't that good of a book anyways? I don't need to hold on to them. I can clear off my shelves to make room for the books that I do care about, that I look at those and I'm excited and I could easily reread them again. Like, I got to this point, and it was kind of recently, and again, my unofficial depth year is really fueled because we're on a very low budget. And it's going to be getting better by the time the 1-year mark comes around. And so, because we'll have a few loans paid off at that point. And so, it's one of those things where it's like, because we've been so low budget, like, I finally started to utilize the library. I went for the first time in quite a few years now, and I rented a book. And I haven't done that for so long. And it was like, I started to realize, I'm like, this is probably better. Now granted, I can't do that for my job here, as much as I would love to, but I live in Utah. They do not have witchy books. That is not a thing. I've searched. I recently searched, like a couple days ago. I went to the catalog and I was like, are any of the books I'm wanting to talk about here? No, of course not. Absolutely not. You can't really talk about witchcraft in the Mormon state. So, alas, like that was one of those things that a lot of people do in a depth year. You reanalyze, and I was like, you know what? I can start to try and budget in as I get through my stack of books that I do own on the craft that are getting low, of like, you know what, like at some point I'm gonna have to start buying more, and like starting to figure out a system of how I want to do that, and like allowing that. And again, that's just one of those things where it's like, I wasn't planning a depth year, but I totally am doing a check-in of like, yeah, I can, because I said for the rest of 2020 I wasn't going to be buying any more books, and now it's the new year, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go buy a lot of fiction books because A, I have hundreds that I haven't read, and honestly, I only want to keep a few of them, and if I like them, cool. If not, whatever. But like, they take up a lot of space, and there's a lot of them that I feel like I've outgrown. Like, I haven't read so many of these books, and yet, why do I want to go buy more if they're just gonna sit on a bookshelf? And like, I know it's a big book talk thing and like booktube and thing of like, you buy books because they're pretty, and I'm like, I'm sick of that. I want to read books. I don't want to buy books. There's a difference. And so it's like, I need to start utilizing the library more. And so I did that, and I'm like, you know what? It's a good thing. Because if I don't like the book, I just return it, and it's the end of the story. And I am making a binder of the year, and that's where I can keep my evidence that I read a book. I don't need to have a physical trophy on my shelf anymore. Because again, part of the depth year is like acknowledging like some of the things that you might have done at a different point in your life that worked and now it doesn't, which for me is a trophy bookcase. I don't need that. I want a bookcase filled with books that bring me joy. And of course there will occasionally be books that aren't in the library that are fiction or nonfiction, and then I might go out and buy those. But for the most part, I don't need to. There's a lot of them that I could just go rent from the library and be fine eventually. Again, hundreds of them to read through. But another part of my depth here was that I wasn't going to start a lot of new projects. I was finishing projects that have been sitting here in limbo for years. One of which, chaos of this room. I've painted this room, and that has been a project that we've been working on since 2020. We bought the paint, we never finished it. So that was one of the things that was like, you know what, we're gonna finish this task. And then it's also moved into declutter. These are my boxes from the wedding. We got married in August. I haven't dealt with them at all. So it was like, you know, I should probably declutter and sort through the stuff and figure out, are we gonna keep it or are we not? What are we doing? But with everything in our house and looking at furniture and being like, I am holding on to this because it was once useful and I don't need to do that anymore. And so it's like the midway point, I think for a lot of people in their depth year, it's like their check-in of like, how are things going? And it's so weird to realize that I'm kind of there. I just didn't realize I was doing a depth year. But when I look at it, it hits all the things. It's been low buy, no buy. I've had specific rules in place. Can't buy Halloween decorations. I need to sort through the ones I already have. Same with Yule, Christmas stuff. Like, I need to sort through what we have and then determine if I want to add to it or not. But since I didn't do that, I didn't really add to it either. Like, the only thing was to replace things, like lights that don't work. I was allowed to do that. Which is, again, the unofficial rules that I had already set in place as, like, a depth year, but didn't realize I was doing a depth year. But, like, seriously, it has been a depth year. I just started mine in June instead of at the beginning of the year. And, like, other things, like, I'm still continuing, like, I'm not doing frivolous drinks. Like, I used to go to a local soda shop called Fizz, like, weekly, and Starbucks weekly. And I've stopped. I don't think I've gone to Starbucks once, really? Maybe once, very early on. But, like, I don't go there anymore. Like, it'd be nice to occasionally go get a latte or whatever, but I don't. It's just one of those things that is like, it's frivolous spending that I would rather honestly take that money and put it towards eggs because they're still expensive. That was the other thing of like, I had a budget and then the groceries happened. It's doubled and tripled for certain items since we started this journey in June, so that's been super fun to watch that happen. When you're like, oh my god. But everyone's struggling with that one. But it's just one of those things, and it's like, I'm not out here like, I need to go buy more witchy supplies, and it's like, you know, I need to sort through what I have, use up what I want to, And only then will I allow myself to buy more, because like I have so much stuff, I have boxes and boxes and boxes that I don't use. I need to use these up before, you know, it's just part of a depth year that everyone talks about. And so it's just been really weird to like acknowledge that I've been doing a depth year without like officially knowing it. But all the rules, there's the few exceptions in there. Like if I'm doing something like a project, I can buy more paint. Or if, you know, like just random little things that it's like if I'm doing something like pens, like I have a specific kind of pen that I really like to use, so it's fine. Or if I need to get like printer ink, or like I'm gonna get me a keyboard because it's like for work, like I have a few exceptions here and there. But for the most part, it's been low buy, no buy, go through the stuff you have that's all part of a depth year. And it was weird. It was really weird to acknowledge that it's like, wow, I've been doing this without realizing I've been doing this for now basically half a year. So anyways, I just thought it was kind of interesting to check in with my unofficial halfway point of a depth year that I didn't know I was doing, but looking at it in that context, 100% is what I'm doing. Because we really did decide that it was going to be tight budget, very low buy during this year, because when it comes around to the year point, we'll have 2 loans paid off and we'll have plenty of money. But it was going to be a tough year. And oh my god, guess what? That's what the depth year ends up being. Like, a lot of people don't do it because they've cut their income by half, but, you know, it's fine. It's one of those things that it was so weird to, like, fully acknowledge that. And, like, it was by choice, but all depth years are by choice. But it was like, you know, I chose to, instead of go get a new job, I decided to throw myself into my creative career that I'm doing instead. And so it was like, it's fine. I'm just curious, have you guys ever caught yourself in an unintentional depth year like I did? Or if you are doing a depth year, I would love to hear what your rules are and how you're kind of setting it up, what are your goals and stuff for it in the comments down below, or as a video response. Like I said, I've got a much more rambly video of a little bit more of the background and stuff of it, kind of, on Patreon. It's a lot less organized, not that this is particularly organized, but that one's definitely all over the place. That'll be going up around the same time. Speaking of which, huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every other day, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.